Hi, I'm Peter J Rea. Welcome to my second floor lair. How do you like my t-shirt? This is from Enchanted Kingdom. My wife Alice bought it for me, brought it here on a visit. Enchanted Kingdom is a theme park in the Philippines. It's a wonderful place. Really nice. They have these different, they have rides you go on. What I liked is they have these historical themed areas. Actually, in the food court on the right side is like a tropical jungle, like the Amazon River, and the left part is it's like outer space, the space program. And they have different areas. They have the boardwalk, and then they have Old Brooklyn, New York. Really cool part of and they have this theater where the seats move back and forth. And we've been there many times on field trips to with our school and so forth. So it's a wonderful place. Horse walked into a bar. Bartender said, "Why the long face?" Pretty funny. That's an old joke from way, way back. Anyway, today's topic is Resalest Remarkable Books number 23. So, to quote Jackie Gleason from years ago, and away we go. Today's first book is George Washington, the Human Being and Hero, 1732 to 1762. Rupert Hughes, published in 1926. This is about Washington's life, his first 30 years of life. So as a young man, growing up in Virginia, the death of his father at a young age, and then how he started work when he was 15 as a surveyor from 15 to 20, and then his military service in the British Army, Virginia militia, up until until the late 50s, and he saw service fighting the French in western Pennsylvania, fighting Indians in what's now West Virginia on the Virginia frontier, and he was able to help the British make western Pennsylvania a British area because the French were driven out. The French were trying to come in from Quebec. So, and then he started working as a farmer at Mount Vernon. He got married and so forth. And his married life, he owned slaves, and he was into politics. He ran for the House of Burgesses, which is like the Congress or the state Senate. So, wonderful man, George Washington, the father of the United States of America. He's a very good father, good example because he had good character. He was a good man. That's what made George Washington great. He was a good man, and we can imitate him and learn from him and be inspired by him. The next book is Gone Fishin' by Nino Culata, 1962, and It's Your Shout, Mate by James McIntosh, 1972. Again, these were two books in one volume. This Nino Culata was this Italian immigrant and describing what he went through in Australia and his experiences of an immigrant in going from Italy, because Italy was having economic problems years ago. I think it's better now. And then It's Your Shout, Mate, that refers to, I believe refers to when they're in a bar or a pub, and it's like you take turns paying, I think, for the beer. The next book is Cold Mountain by Charles Frazier, published in 1997. Tremendous book. Incredible book. This is a novel set during the Civil War, and wow, it shows what this fella goes through, this character, and his name was Inman, and when the war ended, these fellows, most of them had to walk home. There was no transportation. It took them a long time. It took them weeks and months, and they had dangerous times that they went through. I know at one point, he had to get food on. He was, on the way. That wasn't easy. There wasn't much food around because of the hard times from the war. One time he saw this huge catfish, which he, it was so big. I think he attacked it with a spear or just tried to wrestle it. He was wrestling this huge catfish in this creek, and then at one point he was conscripted into a chain gang. Sometimes, the law can be, or the authorities can be very abusive. They'll say, "Oh, you're loitering. It's illegal, and you have to pay a fine. Now, if you don't have any money, they'll say, "Oh, you're arrested." And they put you in a chain gang. Next thing you know, you're conscripted conscripted labor, basically slave labor, which is just grabbing poor people. And this happened to this character. And so he was, and they had him all a chain gang where literally would be chained together and working at different projects. And at one point he was being transported with a group of prisoners. And then the guy taking care of them just got fed up with the whole thing, decided to kill all of them. And this guy, oh wow, he was, although he wasn't killed, a lot of them were killed, but he's still chained together. And he was buried with these dead guys and chained to them. And I don't know how he got out of that, but he sure had a lot of tough times, and he finally made it home to his wife Ada, who had been patiently waiting for him. And as I read this book, the description was so vivid. I thought, I believe in reincarnation. I thought, I wonder if Charles Frazier was writing about a former incarnation, because I think, how could you write something like this? Incredible book. It's a very, very highly regarded book. The next book is The Secret Life of Cyndy Garvey by Cynthia Garvey and Andy Meisler, published in 1989. Cyndy Garvey was married to Steve Garvey, the star first baseman for the Los Angeles Dodgers back in the 1970s. And he was, a very handsome fellow and a tremendous player. He could hit and he had power. He was highly respected in baseball, and people thought maybe he could go into politics, run for the U.S. Senate. Thought maybe he had a political career. And then this book came out, and she's really writing that he wasn't a great guy. He was just all completely self-absorbed, and was not good to her, was not kind to her, and so this kind of shattered the myth of Steve Garvey, and definitely hurt his political career, and. So it was really, I read it because I'm into baseball, and it was kind of sad to learn the truth about Steve Garvey, what he was really like behind the public face. And I think, this is a great danger for those who achieve wealth and fame, that they become arrogant, self-centered, and cruel, and they don't care about other people. They're just thinking about themselves, and it's a real problem, because then you might think you're a big winner, you've achieved a lot, but actually you're a loser, because we only win in life when we have good character, when we're good people. If you can achieve great things in the world, but if you're not a good person, what's the point? What have you achieved? And when you die, you'll carry that with you, the bad karma that you've had and your bad character. So it is good to achieve things in life. Definitely, we need to do something with our lives and achieve. But make sure as we are achieving that we are good people and we treat people well. That we're kind to other people, and then we have humility and realize that without God's help, we can't do anything. We can only do things as instruments of God. The next book is Honor's Voice: The Transformation of Abraham Lincoln by Douglas L. Wilson, published in 1998. This is a book about Abraham Lincoln when he was in his 20s as a young man. He was born in a very, very poor family, and his mother died when he was young. He was a physically big and strong fellow, and actually from a young age he had to work. He had to work and help his family because they lived in the frontier, and almost everything had to be done. They weren't buying things. Almost everything had to be created and built. They had to cut down trees for their house and log cabin, and they had to, of course, also get to have wood to burn to keep the home warm in winter. And they had to hunt for animals for food. And then, of course, they had to clear the land for farming. All this work, tremendous work that had to be done. Cutting down trees and removing stumps. Lincoln loved books. He actually got in trouble with his father because, instead of working, sometimes he'd be reading a book. He was a bookworm. He was a very funny man. Very funny man. He had a great sense of humor. This helped him a lot in politics. He had a tendency toward melancholy, toward sadness. He had this sad streak. He had depression. In fact, he had this one, he had a fiancée who died, and he became very, very depressed as a young man. And then his rise to the presidency was an incredible story because, he came out of nowhere. He was this awkward, funny guy, very smart. He really was knowledgeable, and he was a good man. He's a very good man. But he was also a realist. We have to face life and deal with life on life's terms. And then he came during the Civil War, this greatest crisis in American history. He kept our country together in our hour of need. When the South was trying to break away and become a separate country, we could have become two countries. And if we'd become two countries, we could have become 3 or 4 or more. Next thing you know, we could have been like Central America, many weak countries. And then we could not have played the role that we did play in the Second World War in defeating evil, when evil forces in Germany and Japan tried to conquer and enslave the world. So Lincoln, and he really struggled with how long the war went on. It was so tragic. So many people died. Such a tragedy, the American Civil War. I think about 750,000 people died, men died, and so many thousands had lost legs. And the trauma was unbelievable, and the poverty and suffering that Civil War created. And the war went on and on and on, and Lincoln thought, my God. And then he finally understood why the war was going on, that it was a karmic payment. It was a debt Americans had to pay for the sins of slavery, all the suffering that had been inflicted on African Americans. There was a payment. We had bad karma from that as a country, and the way we treated American Indians as well. So this was our karma. And then he accepted the fact that the war was going to end when it would end, and of course it did end. And he was able to win the war, and then of course he died shortly after the war. This is a wonderful book about Abraham, one of the greatest stories in American history, the life of Abraham Lincoln. The next book is We Filipinos, Our Moral Malaise, Our Heroic Heritage by F. Shonil Jose, published in 1999. I think it's interesting, these two phrases he's put together here in describing the Philippines. Moral malaise. In other words, problems with morality in the Philippines. And I think it goes back to the Spanish era. What does it do to a people when they become enslaved? Well, they develop depression. And there is immorality. Your sense of right and wrong. If you can't support your family as a man, and you can't take care of your family and protect them, what does that do to you? Your sense of right and wrong. It becomes deranged. People become very angry. Maybe get into drinking. Maybe they become evil themselves, get into crime and so forth. So there are moral problems that are associated when a people is conquered and enslaved, as the Filipinos were by the Spanish. But the second phrase is equally important, our heroic heritage, that the heroism of the Filipino people over the years, those who fought for freedom, who fought for independence, and fought the Spanish, different rebellions throughout Philippine history, these Diego Silang and so forth, and then up until the Revolution, Jose Rizal, the books that he wrote, which were so transformative in the Philippines, helping Filipinos believe in themselves. And then guys like Emilio Aguinaldo and Andres Bonifacio, the heroes in Philippine history. And, so many common people who are heroes in just living their lives, going forward, working, being good people, being patient, being good to others. So that's what's important. There's another wonderful book by F. Shonil Frankie Jose. The next book is Dog Eaters by Jessica Hagedorn, published in 1990. Jessica Hagedorn was a Filipino-American, I believe, who came back to the Philippines and wrote this book. It's considered a hip epic of Manila. So she's describing life in Manila, Philippines, back in 1990, and that's it's an interesting perspective when she was going back, getting in touch with her roots, trying to come to terms with her background, her people, and from a different perspective. Since she was, I believe, an American, she'd become an American. But we do have an interest in our roots, who we are, our country of origin. So it's very important. We should always respect. My son, Tim, he's was born in the Philippines. His mother is Filipino. I'm an American. I told him to respect both countries, to love both countries, love the Philippines and America, because I think we should do that. We should love our countries. We should also love all countries, respect all countries. Love of countries shouldn't mean hatred of any other country, because that's wrong patriotism. The next book is American Exiles in the Philippines, 1941 to 1996, by Joseph P. McCallis, published in 1999. I thought this was a wonderful book because this was the story of what I went through. I was an American in the Philippines. And I love when he came up, this one idea he had was, if you can live in another country long enough and stick with it and don't give up, you can become a master of two countries. And actually living in another country, you have a perspective on that country which is different from the local people because they're immersed in their culture. And culture tends to blind us. Many of the things we do are cultural. We don't even think about them because everybody's doing it. Everyone thinks the same way. But as a foreigner, you see things differently. You have a different perspective. And the longer you leave your own country, then you see your own country better. You have a better, clearer perspective on your own because you get away from your culture. You're not in it. You're not being supported by it. It's kind of a lonely experience being away from your culture, but it's very good for a person. I know it was good for me to live in the Philippines for 20 years and helped me to appreciate the United States. And I developed a very great love of the Philippines. So that's how I feel. I have two countries, the United States and the Philippines. The next book is The American Political Tradition by Richard Hofstadter, 1948. This is a wonderful book, and he talks about Thomas Jefferson, Andrew Jackson, Abraham Lincoln, William Jennings Bryan, Theodore Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, Herbert Hoover, and Franklin D. Roosevelt. What has made America great, I think, several concepts. One is the rule of law, that there are laws that we need to follow. And other countries don't have that. It's more like might makes right. It's whatever you can get away with if you have power. And then the ideas of religious freedom, very, very important, helping the United States to succeed as a country. And, we've had representative government, Republican government, or we call it democracy, where the voters vote for candidates who want to serve in public office, serve in government. And then, the tradition is if you want to run, you run, and you do your best to try to win. And if you lose, you accept the results. And there is no cheating. Maybe there's some cheating, but hopefully minimal cheating. Other countries, boy, there might be massive cheating. And so if you lose the election, you say, okay, fine. You respect the noble opponent. And if you decide, maybe you run again later. But you don't question the results. You don't you respect you give credit to your opponent who won the election. You don't start a civil war, and you support the system, which is the rule of law and order, and the people, and respect the people's choice. This is what kind of bothered me about the anti-Trump people. Okay, you might not like Donald Trump, but respect the people who voted for him. And this could apply to any situation. And when it comes to cheating, if you cheat to win, well, you've lost. And this gets back to the idea of character in the people. A country can only succeed if the people are good. And if there's cheating, that's wrong. You're not a good person if you're cheating. So you want to win, but you want to win the right way. And these are some of the ideas that the author talks about here that has helped the United States to succeed as a country. The next book is Star Wars, Episode 1, The Phantom Menace by Terry Brooks and George Lucas, published in 1999. This was a big deal back when, the original Star Wars movies came out in 1977, 1980, 1983. They're episodes 4, 5, and 6, and then there was nothing for all these many years. And then 16 years passed, and they came out with Episode 1, which was a prequel. I remember student James Lim, I hadn't really heard, you think of sequels, but you don't think of prequels. And this was the prequel. It gets into, Darth Vader as a boy when he was Anakin Skywalker and his mother Shmi. And then, of course, the evil villain. This is Darth Maul, who has the pretty cool face with like red and black face with these horns in his head. And his master was Darth Sidious, Qui-Gon Jinn, who was the hero who his intuition told him that Jar Jar Binks and Anakin would be helpful, and of course he started training Anakin into becoming a Jedi. Wonderful story. I like the part when Anakin gets all excited. He says, what are we gonna do now? And Qui-Gon Jinn says, we will be patient. I really thought that was a wonderful line. And then Jar Jar Binks says, "Where's it going home?" I used to say that at Roosevelt Park when we were ready to go home, along with the Scarlett O'Hara quote. And of course, Jar Jar Binks was one of the most hated characters in Star Wars lore. And I think it's too bad. He was okay. He's a funny guy. The next book is The Gulag Archipelago 3, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, 1976. Well, this is the third and last. Wow, can't believe I read all 3 books of the Gulag Archipelago. I wrote in my book diary that more bad karma was burned in the Soviet Union than anywhere else in history, surely, because, well, the suffering of the Russian and other peoples of the Soviet Union is just beyond belief. What those poor people went through, that their government was so hard on them, and these people who were taken away, the whole idea was to have the people in fear of the government. And very people were arrested for very trivial things that they had done and sent off to these camps. Millions and millions of people sent off to these camps in Siberia, very often to die, work camps. It was slave labor. That was part of the reason they did it, slave labor, so they wouldn't have to pay them. And then to intimidate the population. Horrible. So I think the Soviet Union was the biggest fraud in world history, the Russian Revolution. All those people, we were deceived, we were fooled. Those who believed that the Russians had created an ideal society. They had created the worst government in history as far as I'm concerned. The next book is The Hajj by Leon Uris, published in 1984. Wow, this is an incredible book. Leon Uris is this Israeli fellow, and this is a book about, it's a novel with Muslim characters. And it gets into the issues of cultural problems in Muslim countries, and the whole promotion in these countries of hatred as a virtue. In the United States, people, there are people who hate, but as a people, we know it's wrong. If we hate, we know it's wrong. Now, if you have a culture that's promoting hatred as a virtue, this is a problem. And then this hatred for Israel and the United States, blaming Israel for all their problems. And I really believe it's not many people want to stand up for Israel, even because they're intimidated by the Muslim world, because it's so vast, and Israel is a very small country. But I strongly believe that Israel is a good country, and that Israel's existence in the Middle East has been something that Muslim countries could have learned from. They still can learn from. Instead of vowing to destroy Israel, which is the goal of Iran and many Muslims, to wipe the Jews off the face of the earth or drive them into the sea, to kill them all, to just completely annihilate Israel. And this is like this dream. It's a sick dream. It's a horrible dream, because Israel is a good country. They're good people, and they have a democracy. They have rule of law. They have government which is accountable to the people. They have respect for women. Women have equal rights. Good people. And the countries in that region, instead of hating Israel, they could learn from them. This is how life is, If you know someone who's successful, is doing well, sure, you can hate them, you can be jealous of them, but or you can learn from them. And I know the problem is cultural. When as an individual, it's very, very hard. If you're born into a culture is overwhelming. Because if you go against the culture, then you get people coming down on you and condemning you. And, those Muslims who have come out and publicly said, I am a friend of Israel, many of them have been killed, or their families have disowned them because of culture. We don't know how powerful culture is and how difficult it is. And you have to admire individuals, because culture needs to change. The evils in the world, many of them are cultural. Cultures need to change if this world is going to progress. And it takes individuals with the courage to do so. And that's why I've seen a number of these fellows. There's a Palestinian guy who's a big friend of Israel, promotes Israel. Noni Darwish, whose father is considered a hero of Islamic jihad. I think she's now disowned by her family, by her country, because she's a friend of Israel, and so forth. So this is really a wonderful book by Leon Uris. Reminds me of a story from The Simpsons. This one character, the slack-jawed yokel. He said, there's nothing like a Leon Uris to crack open a turtle. He's talking about how long these books are, and if they'd be heavy. And he's talking about cracking to eat a turtle, I guess, after you cooked it. The next book is Having Our Say by Sarah Delaney and Elizabeth Delaney and Amy Harth, published in 1993. This book is about two African-American sisters who both lived to be over 100 years old, and they told their story. Wow, what a story of their lives. So they would have seen, this is the end of the 1800s. They must have been born, and during the Jim Crow era, slavery had ended, but African Americans had not achieved equal rights. And I thought the interesting part was the Harlem Renaissance, which is something that took place in Harlem, New York City in the 1920s. A real flowering of African American culture, music, intellect, literature, and so forth. And it was really a wonderful time in the Harlem Renaissance. So this is a wonderful book. I highly recommend it. Good history. The next book is Voyeurs and Savages by Alfred A. Uson, published in 1998. This is a book about the Philippines, and I thought that it was a good book. The thing that bothered me, and that you come across, there are anti-American parts. It's very fashionable to be anti-American, I guess because the U.S. is a big country, very powerful country, wealthy country, powerful, and then people think of the world, we see, the U.S. is like David, you think of David and Goliath, that the U.S. is Goliath, because the U.S. is big and powerful and wealthy, therefore it's evil, and I don't think it's true. I don't think it's true. It's very easy to be people tend to be anti-American because it's fashionable, and I really disagree with it. And so anyway, this is, other than that, I thought this was a very fine book about the Philippines. The next book is Hey Joe by Ted Lerner, published in 1999. If you're an American man in the Philippines, you walk around there, people will say, "Hi Joe." They'll call you Joe, like G.I. Joe. It goes back to the Second World War. It's just, it happened to me. It's okay, because I said, well, my name isn't Joe, but so this guy went through it. His name wasn't Joe also. He's describing his experiences in the Philippines, specifically in Manila. He went to cockfights. I never went to a cockfight. I thought, I really don't want to see two chickens trying to kill each other. Boxing matches. Of course, Manny Pacquiao has become the famous Filipino boxer. He went to the market, buying stuff. He went to nightclubs. He rode jeepneys, which were these transformed from the Second World War, these American military jeeps. Now they use them for transportation. They're very colorful. Don't have much, I had trouble because there's not much leg room. And if you have long legs, it's kind of cramped because the seats are kind of close to the floor. And kind of pretty crowded. Tricycles, which are like a motorcycle with a sidecar, those are also used with transportation. So he's writing about his experiences in the Philippines, which I had that experience as well. Did a good job. Hey Tim, the next book is The Brethren, Masons in the Struggle for Philippine Independence by Reynold S. Fajardo, published in 1998. This is a book about the Freemasons in the Philippines. This is a secret organization, Freemasons, who were involved in the Philippine independence movement. And fellows like, these guys, Jose Rizal, Emilio Aguinaldo, Andres Bonifacio, Apolinario Mabini. They were all Freemasons, and actually in the United States. I know George Washington was. It's a wonderful organization, the Freemasons. They've had a positive effect on the world, and apparently they were leaders in Philippine independence, and that's what this book is all about. The Freemasons, because they're a service-oriented group. They want to do good for the public, and also it's a social group. They get together. It's nice being part of a group. We're out of time. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. And I hope you find a good book to read. God bless you. Live long and prosper. May the force be with you. God bless the Philippines, America, and the whole world. See you next time.